So, as a recap, what happened with the FTSE trade and what was said? We've been in a market that has been tightening, and volatility has not been particularly great over the last few weeks, and it's been a little bit more difficult to deal with. On Tuesday, we're drawn in these two balance areas, kind of overlapping balance areas, and I said that there's a chance that it will accelerate below this yellow dotted line, dashed line on the I think it was 24, 68, 24, back into this balance area, but I wasn't necessarily expecting a huge amount. However, it did accelerate and it went all the way to the low. Now that's a pretty big move for what the FTSE has been doing recently, and it changes things a little bit. So yesterday we got a balance day, maybe a resting day, and the expectation is maybe that there's a follow through today or tomorrow, or I don't know, but this energy clearly has the potential for a bit of a momentum play. However, that's just one possibility. If that didn't happen, then there's obviously a different thing happening in the markets. Now, I also mentioned the fact that there was this thing with the PBOC, and there's various different news items coming through. I wouldn't necessarily pinpoint one specific item, but maybe the PBOC. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. The point is that the expectation was that maybe there was some more selling, and less of a retracement to happen in the short term. However, drawn on the Fibonacci of this latest move down, including from the high, because it did kind of start from there. We'll look at that on a 15-minute in a second, and the 38.2% came in at 81, which is right in line with pullback level you can see here on from Tuesday. So it's an important level to note. Anyway, we can see just how close we got, pretty much bang on that lower support line for the balance, the prior balance zone, and through that there's potential for even more acceleration, who knows. But so what happened, you can clearly see we've seen the opposite move happen. So there was a double test of the high yesterday, kind of suggests a weak high and that there might be a follow through, but to what extent is uncertain, of course, like everything. So the high there was 22 and it was 20.5, so it's 3 ticks, but not quite the double top yesterday. Anyway, so we opened a little bit higher, and it actually gave us a setup to go short. And this looked like a great setup to close the gap. Went with the context that I thought that there might be some selling. However, we didn't get triggered in. Might have got triggered in on another day, in fairness. It does happen. You get stopped out, but then if you're wise to what's going on with the context, you can maybe get a reversal trade. So this is early on. This is where most of the opportunity is likely to occur. So we actually take a trade here, the crossover after it's tested lower and found buyers, and then very quickly gets to target 1. Now at this point I'm trailing not where it shows you here on the calculator. You can just change this easily enough on the calculator, trail length, but I'm trailing the 4 here, so which is the pink line, because there's a separation. It's a quick move, I don't want it coming back on me, but then it starts to become tighter and tighter, and I leave it behind 50. We moved to 55. We paused there for a minute or so, and it just looked like it wanted to get through 55, but it went there a few times, as you'll see, before breaking. So I left the stop behind the 55.5 at 54.5. As it turned out, it didn't need that. It would have just carried on anyway. And then we got that acceleration higher. And then in this case, we got stopped out at 58. Now, bearing in mind that I felt that there was a good chance we could. Let me just pull that context chart up again. Retest the 81s, the 38.2%, this last pullback in Tuesday's move as well. It kind of is a frustrating place to have your stop taken out at that point, because you think, well, there's quite a bit more potential in this, and that's where size comes in. You know, if you have a little bit more size, you can maybe run a looser trailing stop, maybe behind a jump line 20 or 30, or even the EMA, the 50 EMA, whatever you want, but you don't have to take it off all at once. With this, for this demonstration, this was a single position on the runner, on the trailer. So the frustration apart, this is why you follow your plan. In this case, and it could have just gone straight up in another case, but in this case, you see how far it came back, and it actually looks like a superb exit right now. And at the time, I was mentioning that it had every potential to pull back quite easily. There's a decent sized move, stop us out, and then go to the 67.81, and that's just the way of it sometimes. And that is pretty much, bar another pullback in between, it's pretty much what we have done so far. We've actually got to 78 and we're on another pullback, but that is a nice trade for the FTSE, and hopefully it will start moving a little bit more freely now, and give us some more opportunities of the same ilk.